What is up, y'all? This is Mo, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Pavo 20 Pro from BetaFPV. Now, this is a Pavo 20, but Proer, okay? They upgraded the motors, they upgraded the props. They're actually a little bit larger than they were. The wheelbase is a little bit larger. There's some changes here. We're going to go over them quickly compared to the old Pavo 20. Most importantly, we're going to fly it around, bash it around a little bit, and just go over what's changed. So stick around for this one, especially if you like the Micro 03 Cinewhoops. This may be a new favorite. Maybe. We'll see. Alright, so let's get into some flight footage here of the Pavo 20 Pro. What you're looking at here is just the 1080p goggle footage, so absolutely no stabilization. And we have no ND filter on here. This is just the raw 03 file. So keep an eye out for any jello you may see. I didn't really see much at all. I didn't really see any. Today's a fairly sunny day, so we should be able to see it if there was some. Yeah, and this is basically a beefed up Pavo 20. So we got beefier motors, larger motors, 1104 versus the 1103, slightly lower KV at 7200 versus I believe it was 8500, but the larger stator definitely makes up for that power, and it feels like it has more authority in the air. The 3S, I think, I hate to say it, but I think it is most appropriate for 03 micro Cinewhoops at least. I love 2S. I love my Pavo Pico. It's ultra light, ultra small, but on 2S, we always are going to run the risk of, browning out the 03. We also have to ask a lot of our 2S motors to handle the extra weight of the DJI 03, especially if we're not going to run it in a naked configuration. 3S kind of eliminates all those problems. It gives us enough power to completely handle the full 03 VTX. It gives us enough power to really not feel the effects of a heavier VTX system in a whoop format here. So I think it is a pretty smart choice. This is a good Cinewhoop for those of y'all who just want to plop an 03 in a micro platform and just go. You're not worrying about modifications, don't want to really tune anything. You want something that's pretty durable, because they did increase the durability on this frame. They claim to have, when they told me about it, and when I received it, compared to the older Pavo 20 frame, and I'll show that a little bit later as well, it feels more resilient, and it looks as though the injection molding is kind of like the ducts kind of mesh together. You'll see it later. I do believe them, I guess, when I say that it is more durable. And I did kind of crash it a few times inside because I wanted to see if it held up. I really didn't care about keeping this quad in pristine condition or anything. I just threw the VTX in there. I was like, I'm going to send it and see what happens. And it did hold up. The prop size is a little interesting. It's 2.2 inches. And I don't know if that's a new Gem Fan prop or what, but it's 0.2 inches longer than our 2-inch older Pavo 20, and we're running tri-blades. The reason I bring the props up is that they actually were a little bit fragile. I did beat them up inside in a handful of crashes, and I ended up having to swap them out because I didn't like the way they sounded. And especially when we have an 03 HD system on board, we don't want any of those jitters coming through our camera. It's going to make our footage all yuck. But the upgrades that we'll get into a little bit more on the bench are good upgrades. It really is just a better Pavo 20. And outside of that, not too much to say.
I don't know what I'm supposed to land at. I don't never fly 3S.
We've seen a lot of these quads on the channel before. We've seen a lot of micro Cinewhoops. And, this is just an example of them getting better and better. But I guess nothing new, which I guess isn't bad.
I think we might have had a little bit more.
Alright, and we're just going to end off with some indoor flight footage here. Just a couple of segments that I found kind of funny, and just kind of showcase that, you can fly this quad indoors. I was flying it a little bit, maybe too aggressively than I should have been, but, wanted to show, I didn't really care. I wanted to see how it held up, how it performed. And here's me waiting for Benny to notice me. and he did notice me. But yeah, I mean, this quad could absolutely be flown indoors for like a real estate type of fly through. You're looking at goggle DVR here, so only 1080p, and it's related to the signal. So, you know, the onboard recording of the DJI 03 in 4K especially is pretty good looking. And I think that's what makes it fun. You know, having a smaller platform like this is really manageable to fly around indoors, as well as outdoors, and still have that high quality footage. I wouldn't necessarily fly this aggressively indoors. It carries a lot of weight behind it, and you can definitely break some stuff. You know, if I hit anything fragile, the drone might win in that case, but you know, a lot of sharp edges, a lot of hard things. And I did crash this a decent amount of times indoors. There's going to be, I think, 2 crashes here. I think the first one's coming up. Did we already see a crash? I don't even remember. But I did crash it a decent amount of times, and it held up. I will say that the only... Oh, here's the first crash. Yeah, nothing. Shake that right off. Absolutely nothing. I mean, it was a pretty resilient... The frame was pretty resilient for the crashes that I had with it, and I was kind of pushing it indoors. Didn't really crash outdoors too much. But the props got beat up fairly quickly. These Gem Fan props, I've never seen them before, but they did get chewed up fairly quickly, and you do have to replace... Look how lucky this was. You do have to replace them because you could start seeing that jello in the footage. Get ready for a surprise. Oh! Little Niles! Alright, y'all, so here we are at the desk. Just going to go over a couple of quick things, as the Pavo 20 is a quad that I already have reviewed, and while there are some changes, a lot of the essence of this quad kind of stays the same. But I guess the main thing I want to go over are the differences between this and the old Pavo 20. And the first difference that kind of jumped out at me when I put a side-by-side of these two quads, this being the old Pavo 20, this is the Pavo 20 Pro, is that it felt and looked a little larger than our older one. And I don't know if y'all can see that, but it is a bit larger. This wheelbase is slightly wider than that of the old Pavo 20, and the reason is it accommodates slightly larger props. I don't know if these are brand new Gem Fan props made for this specifically or what, but these are actually 2.2-inch tri-blade props versus the bi-blade 2-inch props on the old Pavo 20. It wasn't this exact 2-inch, it was a little bit of a thicker 2-inch. I just replaced them for a little bit thinner. So we have a little bit more prop. Not sure if that's as noticeable as the new motor choice that they went with. We have now 1104 motors, 7200 kV, versus the older one, which is 1103 with higher kV, 8500, I believe. Yes, 8500 on the older Pavo 20. I'm not a motor expert, nor am I a Cinewhoop guy, but in my flight experiences, I enjoy a larger stator motor within reason on my Cinewhoops versus a smaller stator with higher kV. I just feel like I have more responsiveness or more power overall than with a higher kV smaller motor. Don't know why. I'm sure some of y'all who are more experienced can explain that, but I think that's a good choice. I think the size motor fits this quad, and it feels more authoritative in flight over the 20. Another difference I spotted, and that Beta told me to be honest, is the frame is a little more rigid than the older version. Not by much, but it just feels that way. When I squeeze the ducts, it doesn't have as much give. Not that this one was really that fragile, but I noticed as well, I think one of the reasons, I'm not sure they changed the material, it does, I don't know, it feels like more matte. I don't know, I'm not an injection mold specialist, but you'll notice that, see, the ducts are kind of fused together. There's no real space. That's going to make it a little more durable as well, right? Compared to the spacing that we have, it's almost as if these are individual ducts, but still one solid piece. So, you know, if you break a duct on the old 20, you still got to replace the entire injection molded frame here, which isn't that difficult to do, but still is kind of a pain in the butt. This one, I don't think it will be more durable. I don't think it's going to have any real issue with breaking unless you really slam this thing. I mean, I crashed this thing inside a good number of times trying to get some indoor flight footage with it, and it survived. I mean, again, it's not really made to bash on concrete, take it to a bando and bash it up. Something's definitely going to break, but this does feel more resilient, and Beta did claim it, and I'm likely to believe it, to be honest, just kind of feeling it. But outside of those two changes, not much else has changed on the Pavo 20 Pro. The housing for the O3 unit is a little bit longer to accommodate our larger wheelbase there, our longer wheelbase. I'm running the full-size DJI antenna on this because it absolutely can handle the extra weight. And I like that the range that the stock DJI antenna provides over those little whip antennas. You certainly can run them as well if you were concerned about the weight of your builds. But yeah, we didn't really see any jello in the footage. I provided, non-stabilized footage, of course. There was no ND filter on it. Ran it just like this. I think the reason we don't see any jello really, despite this not being a soft-mounted camera, but the entire housing here is soft-mounted via those gummies. And this is one thing the Pavo 20 does better than the Pico in that the screws that they provide, directly that screw through the carbon fiber frame and into the housing are pre-lengthened, where you can't screw it past a certain point. Once it's snug, you can't go any further, and it's just the right amount of dampening that Beta, at least to Beta's spec. So I think that eliminates a lot of the jello. I couldn't really see any, which is a good thing. And just as a comparison to the Pavo Pico, this is a 45mm platform versus a 2.2-inch platform. You can kind of get a sense of the size difference. I love the Pico, don't get me wrong, but I needed to make the O3 naked as well as the camera in order for this to really fly well, because this type of platform can't really handle the weight of the O3 and be an aggressive flyer. This conversion flies phenomenally though, versus the Pavo 20 Pro does have enough power where you can run, fully encased O3. You're going to get more durability, more protection out of a fully cased O3 as well as camera, and we can fly this comfortably. If you were looking to get a durable yet still small Cinewhoop, the Pico probably isn't the choice. It would be the 20. If you don't mind running 3S, you have a lot more performance capabilities on 3S. There's no risk of any brownouts to the O3, which is a huge plus. At least for me, I always get worried about that type of thing. 3S is probably the way to go for an O3 dedicated Cinewhoop. You're not going to run any external cameras on this, but it handles the O3 very well. I think this would be your choice if that's what you're looking for. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about the Pavo 20 Pro. Nice upgrades. I think that this is definitely a better version than the old 20. That being said, if you do have an old 20, should you necessarily run out and upgrade your Pavo? I'm not sure about that. I don't know if you really need to do that. If you banged up or broke a motor or two and you're thinking about getting another Pavo, or you're thinking about getting a DJI dedicated Cinewhoop, the Pavo 20 Pro is definitely the choice. You don't want it. I wouldn't get the old Pavo 20 anymore. I'm not sure they're even going to sell it, but this is definitely a nice upgrade to the older version. I do have more information on the Pavo 20 in an older video of mine. I'll link it somewhere on the screen. We also do something a little fancy. We might take the ducks off here and fly it in the naked configuration. That's a DIY, do-it-your-own risk type of scenario, but if you want to check that out, I do have more information, more flights for the Pavo 20 if you wanted to see those. And that about wraps it up here for the Pavo 20 Pro. Just a little quick video to update y'all on what has changed with this iteration. It's nothing too new. We've seen a bunch of these Cinewhoops here on this channel before, but the updates were worth mentioning. The beefier motors, the larger props, the larger wheelbase really does kind of make this a superior Pavo 20. So, the updates are good, but is it something that you should run out and buy if you have a Pavo 20 already? Probably not. I don't think it's worth the upgrade if you already have a Pavo 20. I think if you need to replace your Pavo 20, if it's beat up or something, or if you don't have a micro Cinewhoop, it becomes a more of an interesting question as to whether or not this is maybe the best all around. Now again, this is 3S 2-inch, and as much as it pains me to say, because I'm not a huge fan of 3S, I prefer 2S, but I think 3S is the most appropriate, or the minimum battery cell count that we should really experiment with when it comes to these micro Cinewhoops in carrying a full cased O3 and camera. I'm a little bit biased. I like the smaller quads. My favorite is the Pavo Pico because I have the naked O3 on there. It's sub 100 grams. It's 2S. I just like the smaller quads, but it is not as durable. We have a naked O3 on top. We're running 2S, so the O3 can actually brown out if we push it too far, which is not a good thing. 3S makes sure that never happens. You'll never experience a brownout. You'll fall out of the sky prior to that happening. 3S also gives us enough power to lift the complete O3 system and the default antenna without an issue. It can handle the weight on 3S versus 2S. You're going to make some sacrifices in order to get it flying well. So as much as I don't like saying it, I think this is really the most appropriate cell count for carrying just an O3 or an HD VTX. I think 3S is kind of the sweet spot. You could also do 4S, but it just gets a little bit heavier. But yeah, who's this for, I guess? I would say this is for anyone who doesn't have a micro O3 Cinewhoop yet, who wants a Cinewhoop that they don't have to really worry about, you know, cutting down the weight. They don't want to have to sacrifice too many flight characteristics. They just want to put their O3 in there and go and have a good time. This is definitely a good choice for y'all. Don't know if it's really worth upgrading. If you have a Pavo 20 or a Pico, I'm gonna probably still fly my Pico, but I can see who this is made for, and it does a good job. The upgrades are good, and yeah. Thank you to Beta for sending me this out. I appreciate it. Thank you to y'all for watching. Just again, wanted to update y'all because I do have a Pavo 20 video out already. And we do something interesting in that video. And if you want to see that, we actually take the ducks off, and we could probably do the same thing on this. I mean, we definitely could. And it might even fly a little bit better because of that wider wheelbase. Check that video out. And thanks for watching this one. It's been Mo, and I'll catch you next time.